and welcome to Jo Avalon's Cuppa Chats. I wanted to welcome back Frances Billinghurst and back to our channel, and we're going to continue on with a conversation that we kind of started a little bit or alluded to last time we got together online. But firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge the land that I'm working on and recording here, and I'm in the Awabakal land, which is commonly known as Lake Macquarie near Newcastle. And I just wanted to acknowledge that we're doing spiritual work, because talking about what we're going to be talking about is spiritual work on the land that's traditionally owned and looked after by the Awabakal people. And in that, I acknowledge the elders that have passed, that are current and that are emerging as well. Welcome, Frances. How are you?
Great, thank you, Jo. And just my acknowledgement is that I'm coming to everybody from Ghana country here in South Australia. So I acknowledge the elders, past, present, and emerging.
Lovely. Oh, thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to quickly acknowledge the wonderful panel that you guys did on the MoonCon online a couple of weekends ago, and you were joined by Jane Meredith and Julie Brett, and I did share that on my page and got some lovely comments about how much some of our viewers really enjoyed watching that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that you've done that, because it was a panel that was really interesting but far too short, given that it was three really interesting women who have very interesting perspectives and practices based on working on our great southern land. And how did that come about, Frances?
I think it was an inspiration between one of the editors of some of the anthologies there, Trevor Greenwood, who does a lot of the behind the scenes and promotional work for Moon Books, and also Rachel Patterson, who how many books Rachel has put out over the years, but I think at least 25. She's sort of, I think, a bit of a kitchen witch in Britain. So it was herself and her husband who were sort of guiding us through that weekend, and it was just like a good way to sort of gather together. I don't even know how many Moon Book authors from England. There were us three in America, Australia, and there was also a number of American panels as well. And to sort of talk a little bit about our books and what we do. And yeah, it was actually really interesting, because she said myself, Julie, and Jane, we come from, they're all, I'm not Australia, but we're all based in Australia, but we're coming from different angles when it comes to our spiritual practices.
Yeah.
And even Jane and I have both written books on dark goddesses.
Yes.
Even our approaches to those books and the work that we do with them is completely different. So it was, she said, yes, it was very, could have been longer. We had only had a 40-minute slot to make sure that everybody got a chance over the weekend, but it's still available on the Moon Books webpage, and as she said, you put it on your own page as well. And yes, I think it was received very well.
Yeah.
And looking forward to the next one that they're going to be organising.
And I think, I mean, I particularly enjoyed it because it just acknowledged that, you know, try as we might, you can't just transplant a Northern Hemisphere-based religion or spirituality into a completely different landscape. And I think this is what Australia has done for many religions, is that it's the land itself has transformed any spirituality, any religious practice to the landscape itself. I've observed other people in other religions say the same thing. I'm making big assumptions there, but you know, and even across, and that was one of the things I picked up from the conversation on the MoonCon, was that even across the different time zones, you know, our country is so large that the plants are different in different places, the animals are different, the sun goes up and down, but it kind of traverses in a way that sort of has a different experience depending on whether you're on the east, the middle, or the west.
And I think this is something that people outside of Australia don't realise, and I did mention this in St. James Plug, my first book, Dance in the Sacred Wheel. It's like Australia is the same size as the US, basically, in landmass. We've put it over Europe. It's from, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of the maps, from Norway all the way down to almost Africa.
Yeah.
And across takes in all of Europe. It's huge. We also have the oldest, I think, living group of people on our land. And I think even the original land or the land mass before all the plates moved is one of the oldest. So we've got this sort of history that I suppose even we don't really truly understand, but it sort of ekes out of our environment, and being so diverse too. I mean, I'm in Adelaide, it's freezing, we've had about 10 or 12 degrees today, yet friends of mine in Queensland are bathing on the beaches and
sweating, sending me posts about, I'm sweating here today. Well, would you go away? I don't want to hear about it. I'm freezing.
It's freezing. But yeah, people sort of think that Australia is all sunshine and surfing, and it's just like, well, no.
Not here. Not today.
Not here. We've got nothing between us and Antarctica, and it's freezing. But yes, it's like different climates, and even where I'm living, where I am on Adelaide Plains, and I'm just north of the CBD, my climate is completely different to someone, say, even just south of the CBD. Right. Or someone up even just, say, a couple of hours north of mine, or north of here. It's completely different. All these little microclimates, in which I've always wondered why, in say even countries like America, the US, if the countries are the same size as us, why do they still stick to the traditional wheel of the year? Clearly, if you're in Florida, your seasons will be different to that if you're in Washington, D.C. To think about changing it or anything like that. So it's mind-blowing.
Well, I think because we're innovative here.
Yeah, and that's because we have to change it, because we're in the southern hemisphere, and it's even now, so naturally our seasons are different and our sun goes around differently, but we're having to be pushed to look beyond what was traditional. And when we all laugh of the Christian festivals like Easter, and if you understand the symbology of Easter, and it's just like, well, it's at the wrong time of the year, or Christmas is at the wrong time of the year. We still have men dressed up in suits and sing about dashing through the snow. It's 40 degrees. We were cooking roasts, and it's just like, no, you have to go to the beach.
Coleslaw.
Barbecues,
yeah, that's it. Get that heat out of the kitchen. Yes.
It's almost like we're hanging on to, I don't know, something of our colonial past, and it's like, just let it go. It just does not fit.
No, just does not fit. And also, then you also mentioned just a little bit earlier about the Pagan program. What was that called again?
This is the new one, Under a Pagan Sky.
That's it.
Yes, it's on ABC. It's a shortened half-hour version of it, that I understand. In some places it's already been aired on the ABC. Here in Australia, it won't be until this coming Sunday, but it's on iView, and I actually watch it on iView.
Yeah.
And I really would like to see like the full length.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody here in Australia or South Australia is sort of screening it at the moment. But yes, it showed on one of the folk festival here at the English Ale, which was fantastic to see. Judy was on it as well, and there was Partridge Sydney, and Dave Garland from Pan was there. Also Berawara Lee, who's a Larrikee woman from Darwin, who I had the privilege of meeting a few years ago at a goddess conference. So it was really, really interesting. I think there are a few other groups as well. But no, it was really good. It was very, very well done, very well edited, very well sort of put together. And Doug Izzy.
Yes, gosh.
Sort of like one of the ones talking about it for the academic, and Caroline Tully.
Oh, good. Oh, wow.
Who else? And it's just like,
blast from the past.
spiral dance, and I think it was one of the English ales where Damn the Bard and Christopher Hughes were out from England.
Right.
I was able to give that little bit of perspective as well. But no, it was actually I thought it was very well done.
Right.
I'd really like to see the full length version.
Oh, cool. So we'll go and check out iView, ABC's iView, and perhaps even look out for a full version somewhere.
Yes, I think Fiona Horn posted on Facebook that somewhere in WA is doing a screening of it and a few other movies.
Oh.
So, fundraiser.
Oh.
So yeah, so if you're on Facebook groups, just keep an eye out for it.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Good. All right. Well.
Yeah, we can actually contact Helen, who was actually the producer or editor.
Oh.
Right.
To be able to find out where you can watch the full version. Yeah.
Or
yeah.
if you're organising an event or something. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Okay.
Other things like, can we purchase it? It's just like, yeah. No, it's actually for what was shown on iView, I thought was very well done. So
okay.
If my opinion meant anything. Okay,
so it's got 4 stars from Francis. Only lost a star because you haven't been able to watch the whole thing, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Here we go. You saw it here. Oh gosh. All right. So when we last talked, we were talking about your soon to be released, and it has now been released. No, it's the other way around. This is the one that's been released. Yes.
It's going to be released. I mean, we were talking about contemporary witchcraft.
Correct. Yes.
Released in August, as far as I'm aware, the 1st of August.
Yes, but there are some pre-sale books about floating around.
Let me say, by Ella, by Nature.
Thank you.
Adelaide and uses trees and Lulu's Crystal Chalice.
Crystal Chalice, yes. Oh, good.
There's a few places around, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
So.
Oh, good. Good. And so tonight we're getting together to actually talk about Encountering the Dark Goddess, which is your book that was already out when we were last talking, but we did things around the wrong way. So we thought, no, let's meet again and have a chat about this one.
Yes, Encountering the Dark Goddess was released in the end of March.
End of March 2021. Yeah.
So it's been out for a couple of months now. So.
Good.
Yes. So the wheels of publicity and getting it out there, and hopefully it's becoming more readily available. People can actually, order it properly now through Amazon or like distributors, bookshops and things like that. So bookshops should be able to get it in. So
yes, and here too. You can get it here too.
Yes, definitely. You can get it from Jo.
Oh dear. So the Dark Goddess, A Journey into the Shadow Realms. How did that come about?
Good question. I don't know. Over the years, I suppose how I work with deity is that to me they're very much alive, and I've always been sort of open and receptive as to, I suppose, almost like a channel as to who would come through, and I would like to think I'm a priestess of one particular deity, one particular goddess, but that doesn't always work out the way. But I started actually running workshops, one-day workshops, about 2006. So this book is sort of a compilation of the notes and additional research, and I've always been interested in sort of pseudo-psychology, sort of figuring out why we do things and how we do things, and how is everything have a sort of a spiritual meaning or a metaphysical meaning to why things happen, especially the stuff that really shakes us.
Yes.
Sort of shakes us to a core. And when I was doing numerology, this is sort of like when you're working through a person's name with their numbers.
Yes.
It's usually the essence, the soul shaking essences. And over the years, I've had a few soul shaking essences, and it would be nice to know when you go through these sort of dark nights of the soul, or when everything sort of falls to bits, that there is actually a higher purpose or a reason behind it, whether it's sort of I don't know, wishful thinking or just life. But how it's my interest in metaphysics, I like to think it's sort of an evolution of the soul. And a lot of these goddesses, I suppose, when I started doing the workshops, so this was 2006, and there was still sort of a flavour coming through paganism where anything sort of dark, as you know, dark in quotes, because deity to me isn't really dark or light, it just is. It sort of was shunned upon and sort of like pushed to the peripheral, and the goddess was all loving, all nurturing, and the god was all loving, and all nurturing. And it's just almost like what we have these days with this false sense of happiness that we see on Instagram, perfection. And the dark goddesses, to me, sort of takes away that facade. It shows us the realness, but it's not in a way to sort of scare us or frighten us, but it's just for us to realize that nothing's perfect, or the fact that there's perfection in the imperfection, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and often I think that the goddesses that I work with in this book, in particular Kali, she is often has this sort of front that she's very powerful, very frightening, but you sort of approach her with intimidation. But she's also awe-inspiring in the true sense of the word. And it's almost like she will test you to see if you are, say, a true believer or just playing, so to speak.
Yeah.
And for those who really resonate with her or see beyond that sort of frightening face that she projects out there, especially in I think it's the tantric tradition in India and Hinduism, she's perceived as mother, and she's not quite the, I suppose there's a bit like the tough love, but there's a huge nurturing aspect to her. She doesn't take shit, so to speak, and she'll let you know when you're not doing things right, and or if you're, but she's very powerful, very, I don't know, there's just something about her, and I think it's due to her misinterpretations and her misconceptions with her. And the same thing is what drew me to Ishkul from Samaria is everybody seemed to focus on Nana in the story. And Nana descends into the underworld is Ishkul's realm. And Nana is actually almost like an uninvited guest. And there's an aspect to Ishkul, it's almost like, I suppose, defending the underdog. There's a story to her, there's a number of stories to her that sort of get forgotten about because everybody's focusing on the Queen of Heaven. And no one's actually understanding how Ishkul came to be. I've found her very powerful, but she's, there's more to her than what meets the eye.
Yes.
And all these goddesses we have to sit with.
Yeah.
And I suppose in our modern world with all these distractions and everything on apps, we have almost lost the ability to actually sit.
Yeah.
And I suppose it sort of leads into one of the other goddesses I have this book, Steps. It's this, I call it the silent one in the Egyptian sort of pantheon, or of the four inner goddesses. Everybody sort of focuses on Isis.
Yeah.
And she is the silent one. Yet her cult before the Enid story took over can be found all throughout Egypt. And it's really quite interesting that she's the one that you do sit. You have to sit with her.
Yeah.
And it's like sitting with your own stuff, but that can be very frightening.
Yeah.
Very disturbing.
Yeah.
Letting our little thoughts play out. It's just like, oh
my goodness.
But sometimes we need to, and I suppose at the moment, there seems to be an interest in shadow work.
Yes.
And I suppose these goddesses can be tied and used in there, but it depends on how you approach shadow work. I mean, I'm not a psychologist or a counsellor or anything like that, but from my experiences with these goddesses, it's just like, it's not sort of trying to remove our anger, our pain, our frustration, our trauma, or anything like that. It's more about sitting with it, feeling the emotion and being okay, going, okay, I can sit with that, I can deal with it like that. It's, you know, you can't remove it from your life. And then move on. But so you're not ignoring it anymore, you've sort of given it a space and welcomed it in and said, yes, okay, I'm an angry person, I'm not perfect. That's part of me. Move on. As opposed to going, well, I've got to fix my anger. Sometimes you can't.
I mean, I guess being angry, as an example, is a tool to show you that something's not right, or something's not.
Yes.
Not or you're not able to express in a particular way or something, and it highlights that perhaps.
Well, so in goddesses that sort of like associate with that, I'll do a Sekhmet, which is the Egyptian goddess of, I find her very fiery. She's of the desert. She is known as Ra's, the Eye of Ra, basically. She almost annihilated mankind. So it's like looking at that story and tapping into her energy, and then sort of utilizing that emotion that you get when you're angry and you're angry with something, and or finding out what your triggers are, and then utilizing that to, I don't know, something probably a bit more constructive. Could you use that sort of anger is like a very powerful emotion, it's very strong. Maybe take up pottery or something like that, or so you can channel that, or artwork, anything that's physical. And I'm going like this with my hands, because to me it's just like I feel I have to do something like clay work to actually channel that energy through.
Yeah.
And then you can get it out of your system again, as so to speak, and then look at why or what's actually started it. These emotions often don't just appear for no apparent reason. There's something, there's an underlying factor that often we haven't looked at.
Yeah. So when you're considering to put or to explore the dark goddess and in her many forms, or in her, her many ways, you've put together 13 goddesses in your, So how have you? Do you want to do what we did last time and go through the the table of contents? Because I mean, you've clearly put thought into structuring it. Why don't we use that as the framework for talking about it?
Okay, did I put thought in it? I don't know.
Okay. Don't kill it. It was good. I saw that. Excuse me.
But I found the hardest thing was stopping at 13.
Yeah, right. Interesting number though, Frances.
Well, I also, in my earlier book, in a Sacred Name, I had 13, and to me that's the number of moons. And often dark goddesses associated with the dark of the moon.
Right.
And it's like, so you could actually use this as work with one goddess every month if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And that would be for a whole year.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I've got to stop somehow. And also how I work with, as I said, how I work with deity is like, I almost see myself as a channel. And was almost like some of these goddesses in here I haven't actually worked with before. And it's almost like the word got out and I was writing a book. And it's like, oh, pick me. I know nothing about you. So they ended up in the book.
Look here, look there.
Some are a little bit more forceful. And it's just like, yes, everybody's written a book about Hecate or Hecate. It's just like,
yes.
Okay, she wants to be in my book as well. It's just like, fine. I'm not arguing.
That's it.
So I started off with, again, it's a collection of stories. There's some background information, there's some poetry and artwork in there. So it started off with a poem called A Gift in the Shadows. And that just sort of explained my connection with working with the dark goddess. Then there's an introduction to darkness and the dark goddess. And I feel that's important to sort of like set the groundwork as to where I'm coming from, because we all have our own interpretations.
Yes.
and then identifying with the dark goddess. And then the book, so that's sort of like the introduction, and then the book is divided into 3 parts. I talk further about the dark goddess, and then there's the 13 goddesses, and then we work with the dark goddesses. And the first one, the dark goddess, there's an essay on who is the dark goddess. There's using the dark goddess with the shadow self. Then I briefly talk about Inanna's descent into the underworld, because this is one of the main myths that people use, especially with shadow work, because it spirals down. If you read the stories, she goes through the 7 gates. It's very symbolic, it's very powerful, and you can actually utilize that story on so many different levels. Then I talk about descent, death, and the dark goddess, because that's another aspect of the dark goddess. It's not only the underworld, but also she's associated with death. Death can be physical death. Death could be just the death of the old self as well.
Yeah.
And then this descending into the great below. So we actually start walking down, moving down to her own realm. Part 2, which is meeting the dark goddess, I start off with a poem called Hail to the Dark Goddess. And then we are introduced to her 13 aspects that I have in this book.
Yeah.
So we start off with Tiamat, who's from Babylonian myth, and she sort of ended up creating, she was the original serpent dragon goddess who ended up being killed, but from her body she created the heavens and the earth. And it's sort of reflected also because through that whole crescent triangle, which is Mesopotamia, we had a lot of there were a lot of waves of different tribes and cultures of people coming through. So her story is one of these transitional stories from the old religion or the old original peoples with the new sort of more warrior-like people coming through. The second one is Sekhmet, who we talked about, from Egypt, powerful. Then I include Lilith, the original wild woman, who's very controversial. I know she's got a lot of a following within the goddess-centric community these days of being a goddess. I personally have got a question mark because historically she never has been described as a goddess, but I leave it up to the reader to decide whether she is or not, up to them. Then there's the Gorgon Medusa. One of my favourites, which is also a little bit of probably may not seem why she's in this book, is Morgan Le Fay.
I noticed that,
The Arthurian legend, and the reason I've included her in there is because she transitioned from the historical, from the recording of how she appeared in the Arthurian myth. She started off as being one of the 9 healing priestesses of Avalon. Very strong, powerful story. And even through the modern stories that we are more familiar with Morgan Le Fay and Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, she starts off as being like the heir of Tintagel and Cornwall, and also the heir or the next in line to Avalon as the high priestess there. And she turns away from all that. It's like she turns away from her destiny. She really struggles with the path that that's laid out for her, expected of her, and what she wants to do. And I obviously think that maybe she doesn't know what she wants to do. She's very humanistic. That's what I really like about her, is that she has this alluring element about her, but we can all identify with her, especially when we come to those moments where we have no idea, your midlife crises, or you've finished your schooling and it's just like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. My degree, I've just done 6 years in uni, and it's just, I don't want to play there.
That's it. What do I go to? What's next?
What do we do? And it's just like, so she's running away because she has no idea. So that's why I think that we can really relate to her. Then I had to have Carly. Because I work with Carly, or Carly works with me. I think it's more the latter, actually. Oya, she's a Rishka, she's a Loire. No, she's not really a Loire, she's from Africa. She's one of the ones who wanted to be included, that I don't know a lot about, to be perfectly honest. I haven't actually worked with her, I usually tend to do working with African Ulua. It tends to be a male, but Rhea wanted to come through, which is fine. You don't know these ladies. Hecate was the deal. Hecate. She's got different pronunciations of her name. I don't know which is the correct one. Persephone, the Queen of Shadows, is in there. Nepsis, who is the Egyptian goddess of silence. Ishkagul, the judge of the great below. Hel, who's the Norse goddess of the dead. And Baba Yaga, who is the Slavic initiator. I need to end that section. Once you descend into the underworld, it's very important to come back up. Anything like the underworld can be very sort of tempting to stay down there. It can be very comfortable, but we need to come up. We need to sort of like integrate what we've learned and what's gone on. If we've released stuff or sat with our emotions, we need to sort of, the next stage is to integrate that with our whole being and our whole life again. We can't just be sitting in that safe space.
Why do you say it's so tempting to stay there? Because it's comfortable. If it's sort of exploring things that are hidden or dark or you know, uncomfortable.
Sometimes it's like we get ourselves into almost this bubble of, or this sort of feeling of release, let go, and after a while it's like it's the shared, and it's just like, oh, that's really good. It's almost like if you have a good massage, at first it starts to hurt, but then you begin to feel really, really nice afterwards as your muscles begin to relax. And here it's like when stuff is beginning to, if you've dealt with built up or unresolved issues, trauma, because our body holds a lot. It actually holds all the emotions. So when we begin to release all that, but the next hardest thing is to take that sort of the new you into the real world, and it's like, is this something that we're going to be able to carry through? It's almost like, suppose if you've given up smoking, and then the next test is to go out down to the pub with your mates, who, you know, in this environment which has always been tempting you, as opposed to ignoring any social gatherings for the rest of your life. That's
right, and trying not to follow them out and go.
Yes, or is it if you're a social smoker and it's like you have a glass of wine and you have a cigarette, and that's about the only time that you smoke. But, so the next step is like, okay, have the glass of wine but without the cigarette. And this is like, well, we're releasing these things and we're dealing, or we're acknowledging the pain, the trauma, but it's almost like we sort of wrapped ourselves up in a little cocoon in the darkness. So we have to come into the light again, and the light just actually expose everything again, all our flaws again that we've been hiding, and also help other people around us are going to react. They might be used to us in a certain way, acting in a certain way, and especially with some of these goddesses, where a lot of them are about reclaiming our own power. So when we flick our coattails and set up our boundaries, some people don't like that. If they're used to us forever being the giver and doing, and all of a sudden we say no, you have to do it yourself. We have to go through that and actually test ourselves as to, have we actually learned the lessons to start off with. And some of these, like a Baba Yaga or an Ishkagul, it is almost like an onion. You go down, you release something, you come back up, and then you go down again, release something else. And it's a continuation, and I suppose that's just life, really.
Well, I guess so. That is cycles, isn't it? It is. And you might think, oh gosh, here we are again. But in fact, here we are again, but with the experience and the wisdom from what we've already done, so we can approach it and perhaps be a bit more thorough, perhaps, or Well,
what could also happen is going down and dealing with one thing, that might not actually be the root cause. That might be just like the plaster covering it up, and you go down and it's just like, oh. Or if you're like me, since I had a natural sort of drawing to these goddesses anyway, I saw myself, I think I wrote about it in the book, as always going through the back door. And and I did mention about my journey with cancer here, and when I view my diagnosis of cancer almost as if I was being forced to go down through the 7 gates as opposed to the quick exits and what I've normally been doing.
Right.
And I had to be almost being forced to stop at each gate, this is the Inanna story, and release something. Stop at another gate and release something, deal with it, and sit with it, as opposed to just slipping in the back door, sitting in the shadows, and then wandering back out again. So, anything like that, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So part 3. So yeah, I hope what I've got in here, people can take as much or as little away with it. So part 3 is actually, so we looked at the myths. We sort of explained about how to work with the dark goddesses and the different aspects of how you can actually work with her. So part 3 is actually working with the dark goddess. And again, I start off with a poem. This time is the Ode to Hel, which is the Norse goddess of the underworld. And she's interesting because she's got half her face is flesh and the other half is actually skeletal.
Oh, that's the image that you've got here, yes? Yeah, that's such a fascinating image. I always look at that. Whenever I see the book, I take an extra minute to look at it because it's such an interesting image, isn't it? So that is the goddess Hel, is it?
It is, I'm not sure. It wasn't the cover that I originally chose.
Yeah.
So I don't know or the cover designer got that, but it's actually, I think it's perfect. But yeah, it's almost, you can actually see that her face is half bone and half flesh.
Yes.
So again, it's almost like sort of a Janus character, which is facing one way or facing the other way. So you've got these 2 aspects reminding us, I suppose, that at the end of the day, we're all flesh and blood and bone.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What really matters. So we commence the journey. And then there's also what I see, gifts from the dark goddess. When we actually go through and sit with our emotions and do the working on ourselves, there are actually spiritual gifts and things that we may overlook, especially if we're going through trauma or what we call very emotive experiences. And when we've gone through the other side of the storm, there's little sort of like snippets that we can pick up. And then I've got a whole section on dark goddess workings.
Yeah.
How to connect with the dark goddess. As I said, I work with her. She's, to me, the deity is real.
Yeah.
So I'm not making assumptions that everybody will feel that way as well.
Yeah.
Ways of how to explore your shadow self. One of the exercises is how to make a shadow mask. So you could actually make a shadow mask when you're working with one of these goddesses. To actually, say if you're working with Sekhmet, you could actually make a mask, and whether you make it out of cardboard or paper, or go down to a craft shop and get the plaster Paris mask and decorate. You can decorate it like a lion, so if Sekhmet calls you, so you can actually wear the lion mask. Or you could actually decorate the mask if you've done a meditation on the aspect of yourself that probably represents what you ignore. You know, some people call it the wounded child or the inner child, or you might find that there's an old lady who somehow has been traumatized or something like that, or this word guys can use as well. So there could be a hell-like creature of character. You could actually do a mask that represents that as well, to get you into that mindset, into that space. Then I talk about you make a scrying mirror. So working with scrying with the dark goddess is another way of working with her.
How does that work? The scrying mirror with working with the dark goddess.
It's like any form of divination, especially with the mirrors. It's just like staring in the mirror. You can actually get into the shape-shifting aspect. I suppose everybody works their own way, and how gifted you are with divination. I know when I do mirror work, I often get face changes. I can get, especially if you work with past lives like that. With the dark goddesses, with the dark scry mirrors, you could actually get the energy of the dark goddesses coming through as well.
Wow.
An aspect of yourself that needs to be, again, I suppose in psychological circles, they call it the inner child. So we use it that wounded person, the wounded soul within you, you can get that coming through and have that dialogue, or start connecting with that wounded aspect of yourself, or that traumatized, or that forgotten or neglected aspect of yourself, as a way of, not of healing, but making it, giving them a space to be heard.
Yeah.
It's these aspects of ourselves. It's like, at the end of the day, coming to be a complete being, all these aspects of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
There's a dark moon ritual, because a lot of people associate the dark goddess with the dark moon.
Yes.
Yeah. There's I've got a spell for breaking the habit of negative thinking.
Yeah.
Doing crafting a binding puppet. So moving into protection as well, because some of these goddesses can actually protect, and doing things like binding puppets, you can always turn that into, like, again, a negative aspect about yourself that you don't like, that you want to move beyond, that you want to deal with. Again, so we're using anger. If it's like saying, if I want to bind my anger, maybe there's not a good idea. I want to bind my anger, but anger needs to be released. But if there's another habit, or you find a pattern that you are sort of undertaking on a regular basis that you want to remove, you could actually empower the puppet that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting way to use the binding.
Certainly, yes. Diminishing another person's power, that if someone that you feel is sort of like crossing your boundaries.
Yes.
Manipulative. So
Yeah.
it works in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Probably particularly useful if it's someone who you can't not be around, you know. You can't excise everyone who's mean from your life.
I mean, but and also, again, it's like what you're doing is actually lessening their hold over you.
Yeah,
so it could
that's right.
A partner, or in-law, or outlaw, or a boss that's actually, because they're forever, or children, because they're forever crossing your boundaries, they're actually taking your power away from you. So it's just almost like giving you some breathing space. So then you could actually assess the situation a little bit better, or reinforce your own boundaries a little bit more. I also have a banishing spell, and then there's incense recipes for each of the goddesses, except for, I'm just trying to think, one in particular, I think was Hoya, you don't have incenses for, so that you don't burn incense. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know there was one goddess that I didn't have an incense recipe, and because of the research that I've done, I said don't burn incenses.
Right. And
there's also a herbal dream pillow, because a lot of these goddesses, their messages could also come through when you're sleeping, as to help connect with them on a different level, because not everything about the dark goddesses has to be negative or banishing or dealing with sort of boundaries in our life. They can be very inspirational, even like say, like you've got that energy, that sort of ferociousness, and it's just like that could actually be your get up and go.
Yes.
You've got like a project you need to work with.
Yes. So you want to bind the procrastination and then ask the goddess to help you move yourself along.
Yes. And it's almost like, I suppose, using like not magic, how you sort of, for each spell is like, well, for each knot you're actually focus on, say, your anger. So it's almost like a store. But here you do it into a puppet, and then you've got this puppet full of all that energy. So you're channeling that anger, that powerful energy into the puppet. Then that puppet can be your inspiration too. Especially if you say you need to do a project, or you having to move house, you need to have this extra energy, or anything like that. So there's lots of ways that you sort of can work around that. Then there's another poem I've got. I'm called to Hecate. I still call her Hecate. I mean, I know some people say Hecate is the correct pronunciation, but Hecate.
Just stick with what you used to use. Yep. You're telling the story.
I share a little bit of personal experience with the Dark Goddess
Mm.
and provide some information as to how to continue the journey for the reader. And this is more about the integration of what you're doing so far and how to progress it through into the next level. Then I go a little bit about the self, the artwork that's throughout the book. I'm just trying to find a picture.
Yes.
Here we go. And it just happens to be a scribble.
Yes.
So the artwork in the book, not the cover,
No.
is done by a friend of mine, Tora Basculis. So she's done these beautiful artwork. There's just flip past that.
Yes. Yes.
So then she's also done some artwork for some of the goddesses that actually aren't in the book. Again, I think she works with deity a bit like me, like Morrigan.
And they said draw me, and she said okay.
Yes, and I'm going, can you do one for Tiamat? Oh, I've done one for Nemesis. So I'm going, okay, can you do one for Tiamat? Oh, I've done one for Morrigan. Okay, can you? So yeah. But yeah, and then there's extra reading of bibliography and index at the back of the book. So I think all up there's 200. I'll just show 228 pages.
Yeah.
It's a decent size book.
It's a substantial book. Yes.
And it could have been more.
There could have been more, but we said that's enough. That's enough for now. We can do number 2.
Yes, and I think I sent that off to Moon Books January last year.
Right.
And just before the pandemic hit, and when they accepted it, already I've started the follow-up as well. As I said, the ladies were lining up. And because I work with clarity when it comes to deity, I mean, I want to do one on the Dark God as well.
Yeah, wow.
My anthology.
Yes.
But because again, to me, the Dark God gets. Maybe I'm just the only one who works with them a different way. So I've got a talk on the Dark Gods next month for an American online conference, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah,
it'd be nice to actually give them their own space as well.
Yeah,
because there's not a lot of information out these days about gods to start off with. And I did have one person's comment saying, "Oh, this is a book for women. Where's the book for the men?" And it's just like, well, I didn't think it was. To me, deity isn't. If it's a goddess, doesn't mean that if you're a man, you can't work with her.
no.
But one of my last markets, I did have some wonderful feedback from a gentleman who'd actually bought the book and loved it. And he actually had some of Sora Basculis covered prints. And he was flicking through them and said he just thoroughly enjoyed the book. So it's one for the men as well. It's not just one for the women.
Well, that's right. I mean, we're all a mix of masculine, feminine, male, female. We can't have one. We've seen, 2,000 years of a male god, so we can't go the other way completely. We have to be integrating the two. Yeah.
And as I said, to me, even the myths and the stories, they don't. Well, the ladies, they don't care who you are, or what you are, or who you believe, or your colour, your gender. What do you identify with? If say like with Kali, if you're going to sit there and chant her mantra, and you need stuff removed, she's going to remove it, and she's not sitting there going, "Oh, you're a guy," or you're binary or non-binary, so I'm not going to deal with you. She goes, right, okay, that's you want that, I want that. That's how she works. So
yeah, and so Carly, for example, she isn't going to say, "Well, you're not from the country that I represent or the culture that I represent." You know, so can you talk a little bit about connecting with goddesses in this instance from cultures other than our own?
Well, I don't, you know, I'm a white Caucasian, so I don't read culture.
Well, not as well. This is it. This is it, isn't it?
But it's like there was a good video that I saw a while ago when I think she was Norwegian. She was actually talking about cultural appropriation, and this is where so I think people sort of get a little bit hung up on it. I don't feel that I'm appropriating any culture. These ladies are coming through. They don't care. How I work with them, I try to sometimes they will come through and they're happy in how I cast my circles and how I set my ritual space up. Some of them would prefer that I do it a little bit in line with what they are used to. I mean, Kali, if you go to her temples in India, they're sacrificing goats and things like that. I think my neighbourhood, my council definitely will be a little bit upset if I start slaughtering goats. I don't think I could do that myself. So she gets a substitute, which is usually I prick my finger. So she gets her blood, but it's actually from me.
Yeah.
So she just appeared in my life. So I don't know if she misappropriated me.
That's a cheeky question, isn't it?
I don't really know. I mean, I've had this question being asked a few times, and it's like I honestly don't really know how to answer it.
No.
Because I work with deity. I mean, I try and find out as much as I can about them.
Yes.
There are some very more our Indigenous people. I probably wouldn't work with them because there's a lot of cultural sensitivity around them. And but if one just rocks up like these ladies have rocked up, well, it's just like, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
How can I actually honor you and respect you?
Yeah.
But yeah,
It's be interesting if one of them turned up, or a couple of them turned up for your next one on the ladies, you know? Wouldn't that be cool?
I mean, I would think because depending on who would turn up, I mean, I would probably consult elders around my area just to see if they knew who these deities were and whether there would be a problem or issue or, how I would go about. I know when I was in India a few years ago and just kept picking up a little statue of Kali, and this is what I find interesting about her, is that even within Hinduism, she's sort of revered or with a lot of trepidation. You sort of all warned her about, everybody warned you about her. And a few years ago, one of the places where I was working, I think she was the IT guru, she was married to an Indian man, and they were actually went down to a Durga temple that we have here in Adelaide. And I think opposite of the myth of Kali, Kali actually springs forth from Durga's brow. So I thought, you're into Durga. I'll be doing some work with Kali, and just the look on your face going, oh, she's a bit fierce. And I'm going, oh. So to me, it's just like I see Kali and Durga as both fierce goddesses, but they saw Durga as mother. And my working and one of the people who he has a little ashram here. I like doing some work where I have to do my daily work there for a while because he's from the tantric tradition, and they see Kali as mother. So it was interesting, and I'm thinking that's that these two deities that's an outsider like myself would see as relatively similar. They're both warriors. They're both, well, Kali's probably a little more bloodthirsty, but Durga's still a warrior goddess in her own right, slaying demons and all that. But their worshippers see, especially the Durga ones, saw Kali as a little bit more frightening. Yeah. So I suppose it depends on how they come about and how people view them.
Yeah.
See what you're connecting with.
How they're being presented and how, I suppose what personal contexts are as well. Like, what are you working through when they present themselves? Or?
Yes.
Wow. How do you know when you're finished? What, when the deadline looms, or when you kind of, like, I don't imagine one runs out of things to write about, or, you know, how do you know when you've that's done, that one is finished for now? Yeah, I don't know why I'm asking that. It's just, yeah.
With the book, it got to 10 years. And I think, yeah,
fair enough.
what are you going to do with the book? And I was actually going to self-publish it, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to try sending it off to a publisher just for the heck of it. And I like the feel about Moon Books. It's
Yes.
plug because it's a small family business, basically. It's not a big publishing house like some of the other ones. And also because it's English, and I knew that the book would actually be printed in English, and Australian English as opposed to the American English.
Yeah.
Just being a little bit more pedantic about things. And I also wanted Sorobasculus artwork in there, and I didn't know if I was able to if I'd gone to another publisher, to be perfectly honest. So Moon Books took a chance not only on this book but 2 books in the 1 year. So been quite an interesting journey.
Do you think you'll self-publish anymore, or do you think you'll keep submitting to Moon Books and have them look after it?
I think looking at things realistically, from a publisher's point of view, I suppose at the end of the day, what they're interested is the number of units that will be sold.
Yes.
And so anything when it comes to like Southern Hemisphere stuff, realistically, we do not have probably the market here for publishers to think about. I was a little bit, I suppose, quite lucky with Contemporary Witchcraft because I managed to, though it wasn't just a Southern Hemisphere book, I'd put the Southern Hemisphere stuff first, then the Northern Hemisphere. I don't know if they actually realised that when they were publishing it. But to do something like Dancing the Sacred Wheel, that's specifically Southern Hemisphere. So I did approach a number of publishers for that, and they just wouldn't shift the units, to be perfectly honest. So anything that I think there's still a lot more. Dancing the Sacred Wheel is coming up to its 10th year anniversary next year, and I would like to expand that in a way of maybe doing an anthology, getting other people's thoughts and opinions on how they work with the land into the book or into an anthology. I just have my screen. There we go.
Thank you.
Something like that. I'll probably self-publish myself again.
Yes.
I can't see any of the other international publishers picking that up.
Yeah.
Simply due to the fact that our population, or the people who would potentially read it, wouldn't continue making the sales.
Yeah.
But and I also like being able to write little books. Or I know Moon Books, they have what they call the Pagan Portals or something.
Yes, they're great. It's a great series. It's kind of like really, they're meaty, but they're introductory as well. Yeah.
I mean, I did one thing that came out of when I was writing Contemporary Witchcraft was that there was an introduction book to Wicca. So that's why I wrote a little book of Wicca. And I would like to sort of expand that into a bit of a series. It's just finding time at the moment to actually write them. But something like that, I'll probably self-publish because it will be specifically for the Southern Hemisphere. So, but I'm quite happy self-publishing. The stuff that don't want to go through a publishing house and a little more control, something that's a little bit more personal to that I don't think will be widely available to a lot of people, widely of interest to a lot of people. Maybe people who are sort of used to my way of working and writing and my opinions. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I know what you mean though, because I've been working to specialize in in Australian published or Australian written focused. But yes, it is a small market, but we'll keep plugging away at it.
It's just so needy. It's really more so these days because I mean we've moved away. We seem to ebb and flow and go in circles as to where people get their information from. It used to be teachers in groups, then moved into books, and now it seems to have moved into blogs and, heaven forbid, Instagram.
and TikTok.
Don't swear at me, Jo. But I mean, everybody has their own way of learning. But my issue with these later ones is that majority of them are actually Northern Hemisphere people.
Yeah.
And people watching them often don't realise that there is a difference.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I've seen one or two, reels, or maybe it was a TikTok thing, and waving a stick of incense into a tiny little bottle that's about an inch long is not cleansing. I don't know. This is how we do a spell. I'm going, oh, really? Okay, maybe I'm just showing my age. But yeah, there's a lot missing, I think, and especially as we're talking about at the beginning, Australia is so unique, and not only that, but then we've got all the other countries south of the equator, New Zealand, Brazil, South Africa, and this, at the end of the day, there's still not a lot of information out there for us, for the new people coming through, inspiring them to maybe step outside what people think is normal, and it's okay to do your own thing.
And learn from other people, but grounded in an experience of your own environment. So, which the way it's been done for thousands and thousands and thousands of years here, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, as I said, we were on the continent with I think that the Aboriginal people are the oldest living
continuous living culture. Yeah.
And they still are very undervalued. And I mean, where I am, the Ghana people almost got wiped out with the smallpox when the colonialists came over. So we're actually very lucky that they're getting to rebuild culture, but that's taken ages. I mean, I go for walk up even up in our forest, and I'm looking at some of the she oaks and things like that. Going, what do we use those for? And then you go to a book and they're talking about oaks and hawthorn, and I'm going, surely I can use something that's growing locally from me that might have a similar property or something like that.
Yes, there's a big gap in knowing or knowing about. Sorry, I'll say that again. There's a big gap in information available for how we can use the plants that are here, the trees and the plants that are here, native to here, in spiritual ways. And
in a way,
because the information's not ours to share, that's why.
And doing it in a way where we're not appropriating the indigenous, even if we have to almost invent our own. A number of years ago, when I went to England, I went to a pagan camp there, the Curing Gathering, and they had a bonfire, and I was very naughty. I took some little pieces of redwood. They're only just like about a couple of inches long, but I wanted to bring some Australian wood to put into their sacred fires, and then when all that burnt down, I wasn't actually giving any of the ashes, but they did a sacred ceremony with the ashes, and it was just really interesting because I don't know the indigenous connection with the redwood here, the red gum, but I just sort of read up about the tree and what the animals use in their habitat. And when I said my piece about the red gum, that was what came out. Now, whether that resonates with the indigenous people here, I don't know. I've never actually looked and investigated that further, but that was just what felt right for me to do.
Yeah.
Just to share. And I don't know if that's something that we as non-Indigenous people can do, or whether working more with our local Indigenous people with the information that they are prepared to share.
That was something that you and Julie, I think, sort of started to touch on during your talk, actually, the panel talk that you did the other weekend was actually about you know, the observing the plants and sort of learning your own connections to the plants. Was that, am I remembering that right? Like, it only touched on it, wasn't a large amount of time on it, but
I think Julie's been doing some
yeah,
work
because that's the Druidic work, because they're they're bringing the Northern Hemisphere Druid practices and rooting them in an Australian experience, and part of that is observing the landscape. And I mean, my friend Chris Parker here on the Central Coast goes to the same spot at the beach, at the lake. Yeah, it is the lake, every morning and every sunrise, all through winter and summer, and takes a photo and takes some video. And at the end of the first 12 months that he did that, he put together an amazing montage of all of the sunrises. And it was just, you know, intellectually, but to see that the sun rises, it's over here at one end of the year and over here at the other end of the year, and then seeing it progressing backwards and forwards in this one continuous video. Oh, it was absolutely fascinating. But also he talks of the different sort of birds and the different birds he observes throughout the year, and you know, that is a commitment to and an observance of all that's around, you know, throughout a whole calendar year or whole solar year.
In suburbia as well. If you've got like a park that you go by, or you know, in your garden or something like that, just, you know, especially if you're walking past someone, or even someone else's garden, if you're going to work or school or whatever, just take note of what's happening.
Yeah.
And even if it's not, you know, Indigenous or natives, it's just looking at. I mean, I've got irises out of my garden already.
I know, right?
I've also got jonquils out. I'm going, oh, you're a bit early. But our winter was a little bit delayed in starting. I mean, in May we had one day which was still, I don't know if it got up to 30 degrees, but it was definitely over 26 degrees, and that's just not on.
Yeah, that's it. It's May. It should be cold.
I'm sitting going, I want to wear my boots. Go away. So no wonder my garden's looking very confused at the moment. But just noticing, going, okay, here we are coming to the winter solstice. Well, just gone the winter solstice, and my jonquils are out now. I know that early spring, but it's still winter. So.
Well, I think we've come to a natural end, right? Thank you once again. And for those who are watching, this is what we've been just talking about, encountering the dark goddess. There you go. Look at that. You've got yours. I've got mine. What are we going to talk about next time, Frances?
Oh, well, maybe I have another book out.
We'll think of something. All right. Well, thank you again for sharing your insights and your time with me and our viewers. And good luck. I hope we sell lots of the books for you, and you do too. Yes. Keep the publishing contracts coming.
Anybody who's read a book, please put a review up, because I might be known a little bit in Australia, but on the global world, and it's not just for me, it's just like trying to raise the flag of Australian work.
Yes.
Because I mean, this is what we were talking about. It's just like that way more people can get contracts and to get more information out there. But if people aren't supporting our work, it's still a bit of an uphill battle in this day and age.
It is. So one of the places you can do reviews is on Amazon, which does work if you purchase books regularly on Amazon. I don't, and I do use Amazon, but I don't purchase books regularly, so I'm actually not able to leave reviews on Amazon.
But Goodreads.
I was just about to say Goodreads is the other one. You can have your library, set up an account. It's free. You don't have to buy any books. You can just talk about the books that you've read. And I actually use the Goodreads plugin for the reviews on each of the books that I put on my website. So that way that, if there's a book that I've put up and there's already reviews, it's on the bottom of my listing on my website, and that's easy to use. Yeah.
I'm also open for people sending me or tagging me in reviews, putting them on Facebook, and that way I can copy them and send them off to the Two Moon Books, and they'll put it on my author blog page thing.
Oh, great.
And that's what they use in their publishing and their marketing manuals there as well. So
okay.
yeah, I'm in the process of doing it, one of these video online courses that I'm hoping to load up on one of the platforms, and it'll be working with the Dark Goddess and then sort of exploring through different aspects of the goddesses in particular. And then, as I said earlier, I work with polarity, so doing a follow-up with the dark gods as well.
Wonderful. Awesome.
So lots of projects, yes.
You've got to have lots of projects on the go. Ask Carly to help you with getting them off the ground.
What I'm asking for at the moment.
Oh, okay.
She might be one too many obstacles, think work might be an obstacle, and I sort of needed to pay my mortgage.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Need to work. All right.
Everyone needs to be.
It will. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And we'll catch up again soon. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Jo.
You're welcome. All right.
Thanks.